So welcome to everyone to another Massachusetts Peace Action online program, part of a series we have launched on the politics of Palestine and Israel since the May uprising. Today's topic is 48 Palestinians, popular resistance for Palestinian unity. Massachusetts Peace Action is happy to co-sponsor this program with the Palestinian community in Boston. Our moderator today is Amahl Bishara. She is Associate Professor of Anthropology at Tufts University and author of Driving While Palestinian in Israel and the West Bank. And her scholarship addresses the relationship between Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenship and those living in the occupied West Bank. Amahl, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our panelists and moderate the program. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to Cole Harrison, to Jeff Klein, to Ahmad Ahmed, and to everybody at Mass Peace Action for hosting us today and sponsoring this conversation. These last few months, as we know, we have seen another horrific upsurge in Israeli violence. And this is a time when we mourn those killed by bombs, bullets, and even mob violence in Gaza, the West Bank, and in areas under Israel's civil control. We try to fathom the toll today that arrests are taking on young people and their families in the Galilee, in the Naqab, in Jerusalem, and in the rest of the West Bank. We again witnessed, though through the attenuated ways of keeping in touch that we have with people in Gaza, how Palestinians in Gaza are beginning to plan rebuilding once again, rebuilding under siege, in imposed impoverishment, in the wake of so many years of trauma and in environmental ruin. So these are very difficult times, but we also must take this opportunity to mark how these last several months have seen an inspiring upsurge in action for Palestinian unity, as we witnessed on the day of the historic general strike on May 18th, and in the articulation of a manifesto of dignity and hope. I'll just quote from it very briefly. In these days, we write a new chapter, a chapter of a united intifada that seeks our one and only goal, reuniting Palestinian society in all of its different parts, reuniting our political will and our means of struggle to confront Zionism throughout Palestine, end quote. Now, we all know, many of us activists in the room know that moments like this do not emerge out of thin air, but come from months and years, decades of determined activism, of building relationships, of learning from each other, of getting on buses to stand and struggle shoulder to shoulder. Today, we will hear from two people at the heart of this work, based in Nazareth, in the territory that became Israel in 1948. So these are two people who are Palestinian activists who hold Israeli citizenship, often called 48 Palestinians. And they have played pivotal roles in supporting the movement against settler colonial evacuation and elimination in Sheikh Jarrah in Jerusalem. It is a true honor for me to be able to introduce them to many of you in the Boston community and beyond. And it's a true honor to be in conversation with them today. I will introduce them both and then turn it over to them. Rula Nasr-Mazzawi, who will be our first speaker, is a psychologist, social worker, and political activist from Nazareth. She's an advocate for Palestinian refugees and displaced persons and for the right of return. She's one of the founders and board members of Addar organization, which we'll hear more about today. And she's a board member of Badil Resource Center for Residency and Refugee Rights in Bethlehem, one of the premier Palestinian refugee rights organizations. She's a member of ADRID, the Association for Defense of the Rights of Internally Displaced People in 48, which is an essential organization that has been planning and carrying out annual marches of return in Palestinian villages that have been depopulated over the last 2 decades. And she's a member of the Harakat movement in 48. Our second speaker is Aiah Haj Odeh, who graduated from Tel Aviv University in 2016 with a degree in law. And she has worked as a human rights lawyer with Addar, the Legal Center for Arab Minority Rights in Israel that does pioneering work documenting and challenging Israel's discriminatory and settler colonial framework and laws. And she now works with UNICEF on a human rights project to defend Palestinian children in Israeli military prisons. Recently, Aiah started working in a human rights law firm as an advocate focusing on family reunifications within Palestinian communities. She represents prisoners on behalf of Physicians for Human Rights, and she is a founder of Addar organization with Rula. So I'm going to turn it over first to Rula, and thank you again, very big thanks to both of you for joining us today.
Good afternoon and good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfect.
Yes.
So good evening from Nazareth, Palestine. First of all, I'm very glad to be with you guys. I'm very excited to be the voice of my people, to my people, and to the world. I would like to share with you my great excitement and my pleasure that I carry with me since yesterday. Well, yesterday, our association, Addar, together with the Nazareth Palestinian movement, Hirak, organized an event in the center of Nazareth, where we hosted the young fighters of Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan and Yafa in a panel that addressed the various forms of forced displacement that Israel does to Palestinians everywhere in Palestine. This is the new Nazareth. There were no events like this before. It was inspiring, just like every event that we organized lately has filled us with more energy. Well, seeing the wake of Nazareth, seeing the youth taking charge of spreading awareness on the policies that this colonial system is implementing everywhere is simply great. The feeling that we are getting back our identity, our unity, and will and power to challenge the Israeli colonial apartheid regime is so powerful. Since a lot of people don't really know about us, I'll begin by defining 48 Palestinians. Well, 48 Palestinians today are around 1.6 million. We are the descendants of 15% of Palestinian people who managed to remain in Palestine after the Nakba, the creation of the state of Israel in 48. We have Israeli citizenship, but we are intentionally and formally marginalized and subjected to Israeli apartheid regime. 445,000 of us are internally displaced and prevented from returning to our homes of origin and denied reparations. I'll give you a very personal example. I'm originally from Bisan. My family was expelled from their home in Bisan in 1948, and since then we live in Nazareth. Bisan now is called Beit Shan and is for Israelis only. And that is just one side of apartheid Israel. Our biggest suffering here is being fragmented, separated and isolated from our people. After displacing more than 60% of our people outside the borders of historic Palestine, Israel detached us physically from our people who remained in the West Bank and Gaza by the apartheid wall, by Israeli closure regime of checkpoints and permit system, and by other psychological techniques. But for years, people here in 48 felt also detached from other Palestinians' perception as part of the Palestinian people. I'll talk a little bit about the life under the Israeli regime. It will be difficult to cover the wide range of Israeli discriminatory policies targeting us in Palestine 48. But let's take a quick look at some aspects of our daily life Here, I'll address institutionalized discrimination that we suffer from on a daily basis. This kind of discrimination, designed especially in order to keep the privileges for Zionists and at the same time subjugate and marginalize 48 Palestinians, so they will be always less. Here, I'll address the institutionalized discrimination through two main examples. The first one is the Israeli discriminatory policy of zoning and planning, in which I will shed some light on land distribution, public services, and building and construction permit regime. The second one is the Israelization policy, aiming at elimination of the Palestinian national collective identity. I will focus here on the imposition of Israeli Zionist narrative values and symbols on Palestinians. So let's start with the Israeli discriminatory policy of zoning and planning that includes land confiscation, isolation, and confining of people, creating coercive environment causing forcible displacement. 48 Palestinians make around 20% of the population in Israel. But we are urged to live in very dense towns and villages that do not exceed 3% of the land. Now, since 1948, Israel destroyed 531 Palestinian villages. At the same time, there has not been even one village that was built for Palestinians since then. On top of that, as Palestinians, we are forbidden by law from living in more than 960 Jewish-only residential communities. Now I'll give you an example of this land and building discrimination from my temporary hometown here in Nazareth. Nazareth's municipal area is 14 square kilometers for a population counting 80,000 Palestinians. Next to Nazareth, the Zionists established a settlement called nowadays Nof HaGalil. Maybe a part of you know it as the Nazareth elite. Now it's called Nof HaGalil. On this settlement was built on the lands that was confiscated from both Palestinians who live in Nazareth as well as Palestinians in nearby Ain Mahel. The area of Nof HaGalil is 30 square kilometers, designed for nearly 40,000 people. In Nazareth, Israel has not issued a permit for building industrial area, while Nof HaGalil, which was established recently, has 5 industrial areas. These areas provide the municipality of Nof HaGalil with huge income. At the same time, it causes pollution in Nazareth and surround areas like Al-Mashhad, a fact that explains the increase in cancer rate among Palestinians in this area. In their towns and kibbutzes, Zionist homes spread scarcely on wide areas. I have some pictures to show you after that. They have wide streets, lots of parking spots, parks for children and families. I remember one time I was driving my car and my children were with me. And we were passing through a settlement called Migdal HaEmek near Nazareth. And my daughter saw Doug's Park. She was shocked and she asked me the most difficult question. Do they really mean that this is a dog park? Why do they have parks for dogs and we don't have even one park for us, the children? I'll show you, well, maybe at the end, I'll end with the pictures. I'll try to be tight on time, so I'll skip the talking about home demolition, but we can do it later if we have time, because we also have a home demolition, but it's under some other kinds of reasons. I'll continue to talk a little bit about Israelization policy and the targeting of the Palestinian identity, targeting the Palestinian consciousness. Well, Israel has aggressively targeted the Palestinian identity of 48 Palestinians, starting from spreading fear after the Nakba since 1948 up until today. This is a policy. The policy of spreading fear around Palestinians, crossing through the military rule that ended in 1966. People were terrified and found no way other than being silent to live. They found themselves obliged to be part of the system, to live, learn, work, move, travel, and be safe. They have chosen to go unnoticed, so they won't be targeted by a system considering them enemies and demographic threat by definition. They try simply to make us accept being less of a human and less of a Palestinian by depriving us from our national identity and identifying us as Israeli Arab. And nonetheless, by means of fragmentation into Muslims, Christians, Druze, and Bedouins. Here comes to my mind the quote from Steve Biko: "The most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed." Well, this settler colonialism works through various channels. In school's curriculum, our children are obliged to learn Zionist values about the liberation of Israel, which is our Nakba, about Zionist Israeli heroes who killed and displaced our people in 1948, in 1967, and during First Intifada, and about their symbols. Nothing about our history or culture. To summarize this section, as for Israel, 48 Palestinians should accept being the weak part of this colonial system, should be kept away from their history and fundamental and national rights as Palestinians. They can ask for some civil rights here and there, but other than that, they will be denied. If they resist, they will be punished. If they struggle for their national human rights, they will be punished. Those who surrender their identity, dignity, and fundamental rights, they will be rewarded and flourish. So, what happened lately during the last uprising? I'll bring you 3 pictures just to try to make it easier for you guys to feel the vibe over here. These pictures from my hometown, Nazareth, but it reflects what happened in lots of towns and cities in Palestine 48. The first picture, hundreds of young Palestinians took to the streets with Palestinian flags, singing Mawtani, my home country, and chanting to Palestine and Sheikh Jarrah. This took place every day for about 3 weeks. Now, despite the suppression of the Israeli police and soldiers, these youngsters were so brave, they did not want to go back to their homes. The street was so beautiful, full of love and joy and optimism and challenge. Beneath all that, there was still a thin layer of fear, a fear that they implanted in our souls. But together, we felt so powerful and we were able to control it. Picture number 2. Few days later, I passed through a neighborhood and I saw children playing demonstration. A young girl leading them while chanting, "Palestine is free, from the river to the sea." Picture number 3. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the walls of my town were filled with graffitis of the Palestinian flag, accompanied with the phrase, "We will not leave." These are 3 pictures. Nobody would have imagined that they will happen in Nazareth or any place in Palestine 48. For the first time, 48 Palestinians led demonstrations even in small villages like Iksal, Al-Mashhad, Tur'an, villages that have never had demonstrations in their history. And people were in constant confrontation with the Israeli forces, united with our people in Sheikh Jarrah, in Silwan, and in Gaza. It was one movement that connected Lid to Sheikh Jarrah, to Nazareth, to Jaffa, and tens of towns and cities that stood strongly against the same suppression system. Suddenly, we understand that we are standing against the same suppression system. Settlers attacked Palestinians in the streets and in their homes almost everywhere, and they were protected all the time by the Israeli police and army forces. 2 Palestinians at least were beaten to death, one in Lid and the other in Bat Yam. During these days, and right after them, and up until today, Israel arrested more than 2,000 youngsters right from their homes in a very brutal way, and a clear show of power that aimed at scaring, terrifying people and punishing them for daring to show their commitment to Palestine. This campaign of arrests was designed for retaliation and oppressive purposes. They want to break and kill the will of resistance in the new generation. Until today, police forces are present in our villages, issuing arbitrary traffic violations as a way of punishing people in one hand and make us pay the price of the rockets that they launched on our people in Gaza. I'd like to show you some pictures. Maybe before the pictures, I would like to say that nothing is over here. The streets are still burning, activities that we have never saw before. During the past month,
like that in the chat, but these people would know that.
During the past month, we draw graffitis for Palestine twice, and they sent their people twice to ruin it. They chased and
Sorry, Rula, I muted you by mistake. Please unmute yourself. My mistake. Now you are muted. You are muted. Rula, you are muted.
Rula, we can't hear you.
There you go.
Mhm.
Sorry.
I was saying that during the past month, we draw graffitis for Palestine twice, and they sent their people twice to ruin it. They chased and interrogated the activists, and still the graffitis will be drawn again this coming weekend. Youngsters over here had declared that things have changed forever over here. The relationship with the Zionists is clear now. They are settler colonialists, and we are part of the Palestinian people. We are recovering our identity and regaining our dignity. We decided to challenge the Israeli apartheid regime and its policies, and we are ready, so ready to pay the price for our freedom and rights. I'll show you some pictures just to make things, I can't share, I think, right? Can I share screen?
You should be able to. Is she a co-host?
Yes. Oh, wait. Oh, I see. When you change computers, I have to make this new one a co-host. Okay, try it now.
Okay, so this is Nazareth. This is Nazareth from another angle. And this is the kibbutz of Bet Keshet. My supervisor in my study lives there, so I go there and I took some pictures for you guys to see the kibbutz and the differences between the kibbutz and our villages and towns. So this is the kibbutz. This is the graffiti that we draw lately. And this is how they ruined it the second time. They ruined it first time. This is another graffiti. They simply try to ruin everything. This is Nazareth. Hi. And this is the graffiti that says, "We will not leave." Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rula. It's so powerful to hear about this incredible time of activism and your voice to put it all in a context as well. And now we are very pleased to turn the conversation over to Aiah Haj Odeh. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. Here it's evening, so 1 minute, I will try. Okay. So, first of all, thanks for having me, and I'm very glad to speak in front of all of you guys. I'll try to be short because because of time. So I have 1 minute. I will share a PowerPoint with you. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, 1 minute. So, Palestine 48, Rula had explained what is Palestinians 48, or how they also like to call us as Arab Israelis, or also Arabs, or I will call us here as Palestinians. What I mean by Palestinians, I mean the Palestinians of 48. So I will start with you actually with reality, the reality of the May uprising. I will start by showing you a video, shows a brutal arrest of a 16-year-old girl at Bab al Amod, which is the Damascus gate. In Jerusalem, and it's related to another topic that I will be speaking about. Okay, I think it's enough. I'm sorry for showing this, and as you can see, more than 10 soldiers just had to arrest one 16-year-old child in a very brutal way. I can say that it's very common. It's not something exceptional. It's not an arrest that we don't see every day. This is our everyday. It's the everyday arrests that we all face and see here in Palestine. And it's also the arrests and the way that Palestinians inside Israel are being arrested. So I will start by speaking about some of the conditions of how the Israeli law should or recommends to treat a child. Well, actually, you have when you are a child, you can, and it's an obligation and it's mandatory by law to have a presence of one of your parents. You have to get a medical treatment if needed, and the interrogation should be between, not during the night, which means between 7 till 10 during the evening. Well, if you are Palestinian, these conditions will not apply on you. And I will speak about a personal experience with this very child. I was at the station, at the police station, when the soldiers brought that girl, and that girl was handcuffed, and she was beaten in this brutal way that you saw, and her hands were bleeding because of the handcuffs, and she did not pose any threat to the security of anybody. I asked to loosen the handcuffs, but the soldiers and the interrogator refused to do so. And in the same time, and during the same event, there was another man who was drunk, who was also on drugs, who was really, he posed a threat on everybody there, including the interrogator, including the policeman, including everybody there. But lucky enough, he's a Jew, Israeli Jew, so he was free, he was not handcuffed, he was just going free there. And this reality is the everyday reality, where the exceptional is the default when we are speaking about Palestinians. But the question is why? Why we are speaking about, when it comes to Palestinian, the default become the exception becomes the default. Well, I will start by speaking about several laws that shows that Israel is racist country from its base and its core. I will start by the return law, the right of return, and I'm not speaking about the right of return for Palestinians. I'm speaking about the right of any Jew, which means any Jew in any country in the world who doesn't have any connection or link to this land can come only based on his religion. If you are a Jew, you can come back. You can come here. And if you are Palestinian, and if you're a Palestinian who lived here during the 48, you cannot come back. If you own a land, if you own a house, you cannot come back here, because simply you are not a Jew, and simply Israel is a very, very racist country. And the discrimination policies that the state of Israel uses I will be speaking about that in the next slides. I will continue regarding the absentee property law, which gives legitimacy of confiscation Palestinian properties, the citizen law, which also gives Jews all over the world a citizenship based on their religion, the basic law that it's actually a new one. We're not speaking about a racist era from the Israeli history. Now we're speaking about an ongoing situation. The racist and discrimination that the racist policies and the discrimination institutional policies and systematic ones that Israel uses is ongoing, and it shows up here with the basic law that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people, which gives Jews the right to self-determination in all over Palestine. So the Israeli laws are designed to discriminate Palestinians, and they target Palestinians, even though when we're not mentioning Palestinians in the law itself. What does that mean, or what do I mean by that? When the law says that you are a Jew and you can come back, we all know that Palestinians, or let's say the majority of Palestinians, are not Jews. So this doesn't apply on Palestinians. When we are, when the Israeli laws are written in a way that there are criteria that clearly Palestinians are not answering these criteria, that means that we are targeted by the law. I will be speaking now about the May Uprising arrests and the systematic discrimination policies that were used against us, and the ill treatment against Palestinians, and also the excessive use of force against protesters. I will be showing now several pictures from all over Palestine 48, sorry, including Jerusalem. On the left, we can see a child. He's a child by law. He's less than 18 years old. And on the right picture is another child. And one would wonder, why would a child, and arrested one, and surrounded by so many soldiers, being smiling? Like, what is the question? And the thing here is that we Palestinians, we know the cause. We know why we are. It's not an uprising that came without anything. It's an uprising that unites all Palestinians all over Palestine. And we know that when we are when we are being arrested, we are just challenging. We are more challenging the system and the systematic policies against us, and we are not defeated, and soldiers will not defeat us, and the army and the Israel and all these policies after 71 years. The fact that after 71 years we are all united, still united, and a child from Nazareth went to protest because of what's happening in Gaza, or what's happening in Jerusalem and Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan. It means that we are still united, and we will remain, I think, united. This is another child who was, sorry for the pictures, they are not easy to watch. These are another arrests of two young men from Asawiya village. Another arrests from Haifa. And what happened in Haifa, if we have time, or maybe during the questions, I can speak more about what happened in Haifa and how armed settlers went into Haifa and threatened the security of every Palestinian, and marked the houses of Palestinians, but I think we don't have time for that. This is Fahim, and this is also Palestinians who have the Israeli citizenship. This is Sheikh Jarrah. I will show you also, and it's very important to know that our struggle and our the protesters, we are also men, women, children, female children, and male children. Everybody just went there, and I will show you. Okay, I think it's enough. Let's speak about arrests in numbers. There were over 2010 detainees during this May Uprising. 275 indictments were submitted against 275 people. And the question is why? As Rula spoke about the fact that they want us to fear, to intimidate us. This is the intimidation policy. They want us to fear, they want us not to react, they want us to be quiet, to have a job, to be as Rula described it very well, unseen. And in order to maintain the status quo, and the unity of Palestinians, and there are way more reasons, but the intimidation policy is one of them. Let's continue speaking about the exception as a default when it comes to Palestinians. This is Martyr Muhammad Hammoudi Kiwan, Muhammad, as we call him also as Hammoudi, Allah yarhamo. He's from Al-Fahim. Hammoudi is a protester who was killed by the Israeli forces. This event was one of, Rula spoke about two martyrs. This is the third actual one, because Rula spoke about two martyrs that were killed by settlers. And this martyr was killed actually by the Israeli forces, the official forces. This is one of the martyrs that Rula spoke about. It's Musa Hassouni from Led. He was killed by an Israeli settler, an armed Israeli settler, keeping behind a daughter, a son, a loving family, and a whole life behind him. Why? Because when you are Palestinian, it's easier to kill you. Let's see what's the Minister of Interior Security said about that. Well, Minister of Internal Security tweeted, and it's very important for me to show you the arrest of the shooter in Led and his friends. That's what he tweeted during the, let's see, the 12th of May. The arrest of the shooter in Led and his friends, which apparently was self-defense. When it comes to a Jew who kills, or Israeli, I don't like actually to call an Israeli a Jew, but here in order to make it easier, we will speak about, or I will actually call a Jew an Israeli because I'm more comfortable with that. He said that it is terrible. We are speaking about the arrest and not the fact that a Palestinian man was killed. The terrible thing was the arrest of the one who killed. Okay, let's continue. Even if there are things the public doesn't know, doesn't matter, but what he says that armed people are hands of the authorities. And I think this shows the mentality and the systematic institutional tools that that we Palestinians are subjected to. Freedom of speech. Well, I think everyone posts on Facebook, Twitter, and even this minister tweets every day, every night on Facebook. But when it comes to a Palestinian and a Palestinian leader, he would be arrested. And he would be arrested until the end of the procedures and only get his freedom back when we appeal to the court. So this is another example of how the exceptional became the default. And but very important thing to mention that the killer of Musa Hassouni is free. So we all now can understand more the systematic and institutionalized racist policies. So let's speak about now. What now? We have a new government, we have a new prime minister, and maybe we have a new hope. No, we don't, and we absolutely don't. Why? Because also on the same exact day, on the 12th of May, when this tweet actually was published, the current prime minister just called to protect Jews from Arabs, how they call us, Arabs. It's like that we are animals, or I don't know, but this shows the mentality of the colonizer. We are the others. We are Jews, should be protected from us. But who is the armed one? It's the Israeli one, not the Palestinian one. And also you can see here the terminology that they use. It also, it shows the mentality. they use Jews, Arabs, it's Palestinian, Israeli, it's something else. So are we equal that we have the Israeli citizenship? No, we are not. The Israeli citizenship is not the winning card, and it not protect us as Palestinians. And we will stay subjected to hard discrimination tools and institutionalized ones. And also this ill treatment that Palestinians in 48 were subjected to reminds me actually a lot with the same tools. Not even it's not the same in the West Bank. The tools were, and the systematic ones were way harder than the ones here. So the ones here that we just witnessed, and I would love to speak about it, but we don't have time, and so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aiah. This is a very important intervention and background, and also so important to understand the legal toll that people are facing in the wake of these bold and important protests. So I think we can open it up for questions. We can receive questions in the chat, for example. I can start us off with one question, which is I would, and then we'll go to Jonathan Cook. Maybe if you could tell us briefly about Addar, and also about sort of what it meant for people in Nazareth to be so strongly in solidarity with people in Sheikh Jarrah. Like, what are the challenges involved with that? How did you do that?
Excuse me, Amal. I have a problem here with my Zoom.
Rula, do you want to, is it okay? Can we help with anything?
Yes, Amal.
Do you, oh, sorry.
About Addar.
Yeah, I would love to, we would love to hear more about Addar and about sort of some of the practices of moving between Nazareth and Jerusalem over the last weeks and months.
Well, basically, this is the vision of Addar that sees Palestine and sees Palestinian no matter where they are. Basically, all the associations here in 48 are associations that work with 48 Palestinians. Without seeing the broader picture, and we at Addar, we see we see ourselves as Palestinians, as part of the Palestinian people, no matter where they live, and we see that like we suffer exactly the same from the same policies. It can be in different ways. It can be due to different reasons. For example, home demolition here in 48, they have different reasons for this. But in other places, like in Gaza, they do it as part of the war. Here it's a little bit different. Here, for example, home demolition is an act that is done only for Palestinians. We live here, and there are Israelis. You won't hear about an Israeli who had his home demolished. It is an Israeli policy that they use against Palestinians in Gaza during the wars, in the West Bank as a punishment for being Palestinian, and also in 48 Palestine. Here, the Israeli allegation is lack of building permit, which is true, but it is necessary to understand how it works. Basically, it goes like this. They do not allow Palestinian towns and cities to extend the municipal areas and do not issue sufficient building permits, only 3% of the applications, which doesn't fulfill the need based on the natural population growth. So in short, we are subjected to this policy. No houses without permits and no permits for Palestinians. So what we see at Addar is that basically we face the same policies in different, it can be like, it can have different, from different angles, but it's the same policies. And we try to see the big picture. We connect with the Palestinians all over the world, also in the West Bank, also in Gaza, also in Europe, in the United States, because we believe that this is the only way that we can work for Palestine, and we can have Palestine free only if we are together. So we try to network with the Palestinians all over the world. We work basically with youth because of the Israelization policy over here. So we try to work on the Palestinian identity, just to have our children know who they are and be proud of who they are. We network with other Palestinian associations like Badil, like Bisan, Nadi Shatranj in Shatila. So in different places, we try to connect with the Palestinians all over the world.
Wonderful, thank you. I will turn it over to Jonathan Cook. And now we have a nice long list of questions from the chat, which we'll turn to next.
Yes, hi, thank you for letting me share. And, you know, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to be here with people from Palestine. And I want to thank you for your efforts to reach out to us here and all the work you're doing. And it's very, very good to hear. And, you know, we're all hurting ever since the Zionists resumed their blatant attacks on Gaza. But to see this general strike.
I believe you got muted. And also, maybe for the sake of time, also let's keep questions brief, but please finish your question about the general strike.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that was my question. Actually, I had a comment and a question. The comment is we are having a march from the State House here in Boston, Boston for Palestine, starting at 4 o'clock at our State House. But my question about the general strike is I wanted to know how we can support the strike for unity through all over Palestine, here in America, here in Boston, here of those of us who are not Palestinian. Is there anything we could do towards supporting the strike? I don't boycott things like that, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Rula and Aiah.
Aiah. Okay.
I think the question is to learn more about the general strike and also what can we do from here. We of course we've had a lot of really vibrant and some of the largest protests that I've ever seen in Boston over the last few months, and another protest today at 4. What can people do to support this incredible work? Can you tell us more about the general strike in May?
Okay, so the general strike was amazing because basically because it came from the street. It didn't come from the leadership. Leadership. Well, leadership has some commitment to Israel itself because they serve at the Israeli Knesset, so they have some commitment to Israel. But the strike came from the street, and that was amazing because basically the youth people, they made the strike, and it was a different strike. It wasn't it wasn't like other strikes that took place in Palestine, especially in 48, because it was full of activities. We took that day and we said to ourselves that it will be we need to make it different. So it was an awareness day. We made so many activities for kids to learn about Palestine, about their history, everything that Israel does in order to make us strange to our history, to our people. So we tried to connect at that day, like to our history and to Palestinians all over the world through different activities. Other than that, other groups just took to the streets and started cleaning the streets and cleaning the neighborhoods. All this while listening to Palestinian music, and people welcomed the youth everywhere. It was different. It was so different. So there were celebrations everywhere in all the streets. There were celebrations, just celebrating our being Palestinian. Now, like at last we can say we are Palestinian and we are ready to pay the price. That was the feeling during the strike.
I want,
If
if you may, Rula, did you finish?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I also want to add something regarding the strikes day. I think the strike day also, as Rula said, the powerful thing from this day was that it came from the streets. It didn't come from our leaders that do not really lead us, but or they do lead us to very bad directions, let's say. But this strikes day was a statement. It was a huge statement for Israelis as well. Israelis are shocked. Oh my God, are they really Palestinians? We are surrounded by Palestinians, and this shocked them. And this also, they try to erase our identity for, thank you for correcting me. I said 71, it's 73. I'm not that good with calculating, that's the reason. So our identity was erased during all these years. And now we could just say that we are united and we are strong as well. And we are here to stay, and we will do the strike from the streets. And as Rula said, we will raise the awareness about our Palestinian identity. And the strikes day also had a very harsh consequences for so many workers. So many workers were fired from their work only because they are Palestinians. Yani it was a strike day for Palestinians in all over Palestine, which means Palestine 48, Palestine the West Bank, and Palestine Gaza as much as they could because of the bombs on Gaza. So I think it was a huge statement, the strikes day, and I don't know, Rula, if you want to add something about it, but we are also a very big economically, no, excuse me. I mean, we are a very economical actually power. We have so many doctors, we have so many nurses, we are in the tech also industry. We are very active everywhere. So you could feel that we are striking. It's not a strike day that we just had some activities, which I think it's very important, but it's also the other pan of it, the economic one. It was very, very important. So yeah, we can continue.
Thank you. It's really incredible, and definitely makes me wish I were there. And I think I will ask a question that two people asked from the chat. You mentioned the leadership. So people are asking, what does it mean that there is a contradiction between, or, can you think more about the contradiction between the rebellion in 48, among 48 Palestinians, at the same time as a Palestinian party joins the governing coalition, or to put it another way, what is the role, actual or potential, of Palestinian representatives in the Knesset? Is this a valid scene of struggle or a dead end for Palestinian politics?
Okay, so Rula, do you want to answer about this, or yeah? I think Rula has so many things to say. If I have anything to add, I will. Rula?
Well, I think that the last uprising and the strike, they made it clear, and the aggression of the settlers and of the police and the army made it clear for people over here that this is what made everything so clear. It made it clear that also the person who lives next to me in Nof HaGalil, he's a settler. He's not my neighbor. He's a settler. Okay, and it also made it clear that through the Knesset and through the laws that Israel puts for us, we will never be free, and we will never be. There is no there is no justice that will be done through the Knesset, because it is designed. It's a place that is designed. It's an entity that is designed to be discriminatory against us. And the only way to be free is to fight for this, and to be ready to pay prices for this. Now, we've been in the Knesset, 48 Palestinians, we've been in the Knesset for so long, like since 1949, we're there, and nothing happened. It's just getting worse for us. So it has no sense to be there. It's just legitimizing Israel and its policies and the laws that come out from the Knesset. Why? Because we are there. As long as we are in the Knesset, then we are legitimizing Israel and legitimizing all the laws, the discriminatory laws that they're issuing through the Knesset. And if we want to be free, we should be one with our people everywhere. This is a just cause that we should be very proud to fight for. We're fighting for our justice. We're fighting for our humanity, for being humane.
Thank you. Aiah, did you want to add? Thank you.
I only want to add one point. It's gonna be very short. I was speaking about the role of the Knesset in whitewashing Israel in the whole world, because the fact that there are less than 20% of Palestinians and the representatives of them are even less, that means that we would never ever have any change from the Knesset. But it's not this reason is the reason, in addition of what Rula said, yani we can't take it out of context. It's not only because we don't want to whitewash Israel's face in all over the world. It's in addition of all the policies that we don't think that it's legitimate for Israel to represent us, and we don't feel truly represented as a good tool in the Knesset. So whitewashing Israel's face on our on our backs, it's actually very funny when the same Knesset is the same Knesset that also passes the very let's say racist laws that they are passing for 73 years, and the ongoing passing of these laws.
Thank you. And let me now
add
ask.
one more thing,
Yeah.
Amal. This is a colonial system, and a colonial system that wants us, like we are the colonized and they are the colonizers, and they will always be they will always be better, they will always get more, and they will let us get as much as they want. And I don't want to live in such a place. I want to live in a just place. I want the return of refugees. This is our right, that our people come back to their homes and to their lands. And this will never happen through the Knesset. So the Knesset will always protect them and their rights. They get privileges through the Knesset. They get their privileges because we lose our privileges. I mean all the Palestinians, not just the 48 Palestinians. We want a just place. So we want to disassemble this colonial system. And it won't happen through the Knesset. So we fight.
Absolutely. This is such an important message, which we don't get, I think, in the US media here. Narratives of progress, of including the Palestinian parties for the first time. So all of this is so very powerful. Can I ask Lynn Siegel? I'm going to ask you to unmute. Thank you.
Yeah. Are any of you three Israeli Palestinians? Yes?
Yes, we all are.
Oh, you all are. Oh, okay. I'm sorry I missed that. I was
me less than others, perhaps.
Okay. No, but I get it. But see, now there's the opportunity to conjoin, unify Palestine, right? But the Palestinian Authority, I just heard yesterday or the day before, there's some other insidious thing that just made me all the more realize that Israel is intimately connected to the PA. And, and therefore we get, quote unquote, this troll saying that, Hamas, what about Hamas? Well, that's why Hamas, that's why the distinction. But now we have another thing since May, the 11-day war in May. And that is, we have you folks, and I'm calling you Israeli Palestinians from now. Israeli Palestinians, as disgusting as the Israeli part of it is, it's a truer expression than Palestinian Israelis or Arab, horribly. Arab is just a larger group. Palestinians are a particular group within Arab community. So that's really unfair. But this unification of the Israeli Palestinians with the PA, with Gaza, this has a better opportunity now than ever after May. And also, I wanted to bring up, I could screen share it actually, but do you know this action that happened in Oldham in England yesterday, or just right away, occupying the site of El Bit Ferranti, a Cairo house, Oldham. They caused an estimated 500,000 pounds of damage to military equipment and components to prevent Ferranti Technology and their parent company, Elbit Systems, from continuing to supply arms to the Israeli military's repression of Palestinians. Police were offering round-the-clock protection since the latest wave of Israeli aggression in May, right? So things are happening since May.
Thank you, Lynn.
And
A little hard to hear you, honestly.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
This is very good. I think you've given us a lot to think about or talk about. Yeah?
Yeah.
I want to say, first of all, sorry, I didn't mean to speak for all of our identities. And I also, you have talked about different, I mean, I think the terminology is something itself to unpack. And I know that as a scholar, I'm always thinking about what terminologies to use that are understandable to people, but also feel okay for Palestinians ourselves. So I didn't mean to speak for your identities or how you like to be called. That's one thing I definitely want to say. And maybe, I don't know if you want to talk about the Sulta or the Palestinian Authority as such, or other issues that Lynn has raised. And we'll probably go about 15 more minutes. There's a few more great questions in the chat, but I'll turn it over to the speakers now.
Well, for me, like it doesn't work as to be Israeli-Palestinian. There is no Israeli-Palestinian. We are Palestinians, and it's, for me, it's really sad that I have to say that I am 48 Palestinian. It's so sad for me. I am a Palestinian, and I have to identify myself like with a certain geographic area, just because they fragmentized us, and they took parts of Palestine, and it's sad for me. I want to be, my identity is Palestinian. That's it. And I say 48 Palestinian just to make it clear. So.
Exactly. I also want to remark this, what Rula just said. Yani, I feel 100% Palestinian, period, Palestinian. The Israeli part is only, the Israeli part of, now when Rula said 48, or Israeli, only to distinguish now for audience, for American audience, who we are speaking about, because actually Israel had succeeded to divide us through the years in the terminology that it used. So I think we should start using only Palestinians for Palestinians 48, 67, Gaza, refugees all over the world. We are only Palestinians. I feel Palestinian 100%, no, and I am Palestinian. Using Israeli Palestinian, I don't feel Israeli in any way. I'm not, and also the basic law. Israel is the state, the nation state of Jews. I'm not a Jew. It's that simple. And our culture, our language, everything. Every cell of my body is Palestinian. So the terminology of Israeli-Palestinian is not accurate.
Thank you both so much. It's really powerful and important to hear your voices on this. I also feel certainly Palestinian and not Israeli in any way. And it is a challenge, I think, when we're speaking to outside audiences. Sometimes, I don't know how you feel about this, but because people don't always know what 48 Palestinians mean, I have been moving towards using Palestinians who hold Israeli passports or Israeli citizenship, because it sort of speaks to, first of all, it's long and cumbersome. So in some ways it speaks to the way in which that identity is a very difficult one to hold, but it doesn't put a modifier in front of Palestinian, but it speaks to a certain category that that may be useful at certain moments in speaking to American audiences about groups. I mean, it's a difficult issue, and really one that I think about very often as a writer. So we have some really great questions here in the chat. How is it, this is a hard one, a really hard one. How is it possible to struggle against Israeli planning and housing rules that discriminate against Palestinian citizens, like zoning for agricultural land around Palestinian towns, that forbids housing. Of course, this also drives housing prices sky high. How is it possible to confront that reality, especially as you're talking about, you're raising children or thinking about the next generation or just trying to survive?
Amal, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Logistically, or how do people struggle against the Israeli planning and housing rules that discriminate against Palestinian citizens, like the zoning and agricultural land around Palestinian towns that forbids housing, and also obviously drives up the cost of land? In some ways you've been describing this, some of the activism, the grassroots activism and protests and so forth. I don't know if you want to talk about how to practically challenge these, kind of as you're going about planning the next year of your life, for example. I don't know.
This is really hard. If I can start, this is really hard. I show you the picture of Nazareth. It's sad to live here. It's inhumane to live here. There's no place. I have, if I finish studying or working late and I come back to my neighborhood, I won't find a place to park my car. And maybe the next day, one of the neighbors would get really angry about me or do something to me. And then, oh my God, Arabs are so aggressive. We're not aggressive. We live in an inhumane conditions. So this is really hard. And this is something that this is our daily life. How to confront this? When there are demolition decisions for a house here or there, we try to make people come there, hundreds, thousands, as many as we can. We don't always succeed to do that, and sometimes they if there is a huge number of people, sometimes they delay it, but they delay it for 2 weeks, for a month, and then they come back and they demolish. This is very hard. We are standing against a system, a very powerful system, and they have weapons, they have everything, and when they demolish, they make the people pay for the demolition also. And paying for the demolition, it can be something around 500 to 600 thousand shekels, which is a lot. People don't have these amounts of money, and certainly demolishing houses is this is a trauma for people. So here we are talking all the time about the facts, but in these houses, in these homes, families were raised, and people have memories, and it's their place, it's their only. This is very hard. I don't know how to stand and confront these demolitions. I think that all the world should be standing with us in order not to keep any more, not to have any more home demolitions, not to have any more children or women or men left out, without a place to be in. So how do we confront? I don't know how we confront. We know that through the Knesset we can't do anything, nothing. It's not working. 73 years, it's just continuing. So I think the whole world that speaks about human rights should just open the eye and see what's going on. What's going on is a catastrophe for people. We're living in a very hard place. It's so hard to live in such places, so very dense. I don't know if Aiah has anything to add.
Well, actually, now I was thinking, how would we really confront? Because you can't really confront, because we are subjected to all this brutal violence. It's we can we can demonstrate, we can protest, we can do so many things, but the one who built the house, the one who built his hopes, his memories, he also is the same person who has to demolish it if it's not, يعني, it's so inhuman that you ask someone to demolish his own house يعني, with the same hands that built it. يعني, or يعني, there are two ways to demolish a house. They give you the order, go and demolish your house, and you, if we will demolish the house, you will pay for it. And so for so many Palestinians, yani, the connection with the house, we're not only speaking about a wall or a window. No, we are speaking about houses that contain families, memories. It's part of the policies that Israel had. Yani, one of Israel's policies was to dehumanize us. Yani, you don't have any feelings. You will not feel any connection to your home or to your house. So how to stop it or how to confront it? Yani, we can't. No, yani, I'm actually, I don't know, Rula, if you think that, yani, also Rula mentioned that maybe the international community could interfere or do something, but it's, yani, we're speaking about an ongoing policy. Yani, and now maybe we are sitting, yesterday they had demolished a house of a family in the West Bank, and we're not speaking only about the West Bank, it's also inside the 48. So I don't know how to confront it. I'm actually speechless regarding this.
I mean, we could also think about what happened in the Naqab and how people stood up really collectively. I mean, there's home demolitions and then there's ongoing forced displacement. I mean, obviously in Sheikh Jarrah of entire neighborhoods, but also really of entire towns and in some ways regions, right? And Palestinians have organized so powerfully against this.
Just like what we did yesterday in Nazareth, like we started sending buses with the youth to go to Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan. Silwan, they will be evacuated from their houses, and we're talking about a huge number of people, like 1,500 people will be evacuated from their houses in Silwan. 28 families in Sheikh Jarrah. And this is just now during this month or the next, and we invited them here to just speak about what they're going through, so people can be united again. So Nazareth won't fight separately, and Sheikh Jarrah won't be alone, and so we all would be together and try to fight together. This is the only thing that we can do. So we try to be in Sheikh Jarrah all the time. We try to be in Silwan all the time, because they, like the biggest evacuations are planned to be there, and try to do the delay until hopefully we will have a solution. Mm-hmm.
Maybe one more question to end the afternoon and evening. A few people have asked sort of what people can do from here to support Palestinians, and a more specific version of that question also around the general strike. The general strike had an incredible economic impact. I would love to learn how we can build upon that work to build power and economic sovereignty for Palestinians in Palestine. Any last comments on that?
What was the first thing?
Generally, how can people in the United States support Palestinians?
Yeah.
And then more specifically about building power and economic, ways we can build power and economic sovereignty for Palestinians in Palestine.
Okay. So first of all, I think you can share the Palestinian stories. You can share it and make it more available for others, because we are seeing now how Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is exposing people to this amount, to us as Palestinians. So I think you can speak with your friend, with your daughter, with anyone about what is happening in Palestine. And second thing regarding the strike and the economical impact, let's say, you can boycott Israeli products. You can just boycott them, and the economy of Israel would be way less stronger, and they will have to put more money, actually, not on the military system, also on maybe other stuff. Boycotting Israel, I think, is a very important tool to support us as Palestinians. And I think you can, in both ways, speak about, share the story of Palestine and also boycott Israel. Rula, what do you think?
Well, I think that we should rely on ourselves. We should rely on ourselves, and we should get rid of Oslo and the Knesset, and we should continue to struggle for our freedom, and struggle for our identity, and struggle to get free. I think that we need to resist injustice and resist the colonial system. We shouldn't be colonized. We should be like all the people all over the world. I think that we should, just like we do with the graffiti, they keep ruining our graffitis, and we keep drawing them again. They keep demolishing our homes, and we keep building them again, and building them together. So the unity and working together and relying on ourselves, that's what I think is what we should continue to do. And what you guys can do is that you can just do something with your governments. You can bring the voice, and you can just do something on that level, on the level of government, of congressmen, of your representatives. I think that it's our duty to speak about this and to do something, and it's our duty as individuals too, not just as as the Palestinian people. That's about it.
Thank you. I want to thank you so much. I know for me, it's so invigorating to hear from each of you, so eloquent and so much in the struggle every day. So I'm so grateful for that. There is one quick question about following up to watch this again. Cole, it will be on the Mass Peace Action YouTube channel, correct?
Exactly. And we will send out an email probably tomorrow with a link to the video, so you can also watch it again, as well as share it with your friends and contacts.
Great. Thank you again to our speakers and to Mass Peace Action for hosting us today and organizing.
Thank you, Mass Peace Action. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.